Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It is episode 2685 of The Tom Woods Show, and I'm very glad to be joined today by Matt Smith. Now, Matt is an extremely impressive guy in this sense. He has just written a book that I had an electronic copy of for review purposes for this very episode that you're listening to. And then as soon as I finished it, I went immediately to my computer and ordered a print copy because I decided I absolutely have to have this thing. Co-authored with his son, Maxim, and with our great friend, Doug Casey. It's called The Preparation: How to Become Competent, Confident, and Dangerous. I think it's one of the most valuable things I have come across in terms of genuinely helping people to become something great in a very long time. Maybe the best thing I've ever seen in that regard. Wow. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, and thank you for those compliments. That means a lot coming from you. It really does.
Well, Matt, I just purchased something I already own. I mean, what does that tell you? So I don't want people, this is not another one of these things about, college is a waste of time and money and you should go do this instead because then you won't have so much debt at the end. I mean, that's true. You won't have so much debt at the end. And yes, it's true that simply following the path that's laid out for you by others, especially in 2025, may not be the best one to take. All that's true, but this goes so far beyond that in terms of making yourself into somebody you want to be, making yourself into not just some cog in a machine with hyper specialization, but an interesting person, the kind of person others want to emulate, others want to be around, the kind of person who fascinates people. This is how you become that. And but let me start with, if I may, Matt, with something that is somewhat mundane, and let's just get it out of the way. If I'm imagining myself as an 18-year-old man again. If I do not follow the traditional path, which is the 4-year degree and then sit by the phone and wait for somebody to call me up because they think I'm useful. If I don't follow that, the problem is that everybody else still does follow that. I mean, most people still follow that. Most employers still follow that. So most employers still think I need to signal to them that I'm a good rule follower and that I have some competence, and I show that to them with that degree. If I don't have it, then yes, I can say, well, I have many good reasons for not having pursued this, all of which will be ignored by employers who do want that. Is your answer simply, well, I'm not looking for an employer? Is that your answer? Is there more to be said?
It's not the only answer, but that's certainly part of it. I mean, Doug and our view ultimately is that you should be an entrepreneur. You really shouldn't be a cubicle dweller, that's for sure. But, I think that the thing is related to the question. Often people ask young men what they want to be when they grow up, and what they mean is what kind of jobs you're going to get to be responsible to get income. And kind of the premise of the book is that is entirely the wrong question. We should not ask young men this question. The question should be, what kind of man do you want to become? And that their efforts should be devoted to becoming that man, first and foremost. Not to going through a series of motions that allow you to get some certificate that allows you to get enough income, hopefully, to be able to survive, maybe a little extra for a vacation or two. It's to become the man that you want to become. That's the first goal. And you're right that everybody else is following the traditional path. And I can tell you, because my son has been the 2-year beta tester for this. I mean, Doug's been wanting to write this book. He's been asking me to write it with him for a dozen years. And I've always said no, because it didn't make sense. But when my son was 17 and he was on the cusp of what to do, I could see in him the fear and the doubt and the not knowing what to do, knowing he didn't want to go to college. And so all of a sudden I was motivated as a dad to try and come up with a solution. And the solution was to write the book Doug wanted to write, to make it really work. But the truth is we only had like a philosophical framework for what's possible. With Maxim doing this for 2 years, we've actually learned the realities of it. We've been able to actually create structure that actually works. And we've been able to field test it and know how to make it work properly. And one of the big challenges that Max encountered, especially early on, was that to everyone else in the world, what he was doing looked like he was failing because he wasn't going to college. It looked like he was on the road to nowhere. So it wasn't even about ultimately a potential employer looking at him and judging him by what he had done, but it was by his entire peer group. They're like, "What are you doing? This doesn't make any sense." So this thing, when you step outside of the box and you're doing something totally different than what everyone else does, it looks like failure. And I can say, as an entrepreneur, in the businesses I built, and I built many over the last 30 years, it always looked like a failure until it was a success. That's actually, everyone thought I was screwing up until I became rich. That's how it works.
Well, when we get to some of the specifics, I think people will see, I hope, what I saw when I went through this. I was enjoying reading it, but then we get to part 2 with the specifics. And when I looked at the kinds of things that you're contemplating having young men do, and we should say a word about young men versus young women, and that there'll be another book, and let's just clarify that this is kind of intended for young men for the time being. But when I looked at exactly what it is you had in mind for that, they'll instead of sitting in a sociology lecture hall every morning, they would do this and then this and then this and then this. I thought to myself, if I had it to do over and I could be that guy, I would. I absolutely would. Even though I have the most elite academic credentials you could possibly ask for, I would trade those away to be the man that this book trains you to be. No, absolutely no doubt in my mind, no hesitation whatsoever. So let's start with this. In order to follow this particular plan that you're laying out, it almost seems like you would have to be self-motivated. Like you can't nag a student or a child into this. Like they either have to want it or they don't.
Well, can you nag a child into anything really? And can you nag an 18-year-old to do anything? Well,
it's good that you say that, because sometimes we have to point out, because I work on the Ron Paul homeschool curriculum, and
which is great, by the way. I've used it.
Thank you. And the thing is, that's the kind of thing that you have to have a little bit of self-motivation, or if your kids need to be badgered all the time, this is not the curriculum for you. So I acknowledge that too.
Yeah, and this curriculum is not as necessarily as rigorous as the Ron Paul homeschool curriculum is. It's not as rigorous as that is, having been through it with my kids. But because essentially what we're asking 18-year-old plus kids to do is to devote 40 hours a week. And they can choose which hours, for the most part, to accomplish all this. Of course, some things they don't have total control over the schedule, because, you can only, like my son's taking flight lessons now, you can only do that when that's available. But it's something that they can shape better around a schedule that makes sense for them. So but you're right, you can't nag them into doing much. But what I find most with young men, especially, is not that they aren't motivated. It's that they lack direction. They just don't know what to do. They want to do something. They want to do something that matters. Just point me in the direction and tell me, and I will go. That's the way most of them are.
I'm going to do something a little unusual here. I actually think it might be better to start looking at part 2 of your book, to give people a sense so that this is not just a bunch of abstractions. People get a sense of what you have in mind, and then actually backtrack and talk about some of the foundations that underlay it. So let's go to you're envisioning a 4-year program that would wind up costing probably about 1 of the 4 years somebody would spend in college. And you talk about how would you pay for this, and all, you cover all that. But let's leave that all aside and talk about exactly what this consists of. So we have the anchor courses, the academic program, and then activities, which you describe as doing fun, and then there's
Fun,
a word that we don't use on the Tom Woods show.
Okay.
But so I think it was when I started looking at the anchor courses, the kinds of things that you would be able to do by the end of this, that, you would be the most interesting person I know if you could do all these things.
Yeah. So basically, there's an infinite possibility that we could choose from for these 16 anchor courses. I mean, there are many, many, many more we could choose, but we picked 16. Are they the best 16 for every single person? I don't know, but I do think that they're quite solid, and I do think they're very effective. But we also teach people how to build their own cycle. We call these quarters cycles. So there's 16 cycles, which equates to 4 years. And there's some things in there that are very cheap. Like the first thing my son did is he became an EMT, which you think an EMT, it's, as far as what that gets you as a career, you can ride on an ambulance and make minimum wage. It's not a great gig, but you also you do legitimately know how to save a life. You know how to treat somebody who has a real injury. You know how to take care of people when it matters. And people don't have those skills today. And my son ended up parlaying that actually into a summer gig, fighting forest fires, where he earned $600 a day, actually. $600 a day. That's how much I earned in the Army in a month when I was his age. I mean, but so there's an EMT. Currently, he's taking flight lessons to get his private pilot's license. That's by far the most expensive of all of these to do. You don't have to do it, but it's interesting. And he's learned a lot by doing it. In fact, it's even been a little bit harder for him because he's done half of his training in the US and half of his training in Uruguay, where we live. So he's doing it in different languages. And so it's been more interesting for him to do it that way. But that's one of them. There's a school which teaches you to operate all the heavy machinery out there and get certified to run bulldozers and backhoes and all that stuff, which sounds to me like just pure fun, by the way. But it also qualifies you for very high-paying jobs if you want them. There's a welding section in there, because welding is at its highest level, it's an art form, really, but it also is practically very useful. So it starts off with a lot of these manual things, like how to shape the world around you. One of them is attending the Shelter Institute, where they actually teach you how to build a house.
I was going to bring that one up. Yeah.
I mean, I want to build a house. I want to know how to build a house. I don't want to just hire people to do it for me. I mean, I want to understand it and do it and have the skills around it. So that's one of them. So there's these really basic things that teach you how to shape the world. The physical world around you is a big part of it.
Okay, let me interrupt you, and I have to interrupt you with the most dumb, trivial observation, but I just can't help it. I know that these days we hear a lot of complaints that the dating scene is just a mess. It is just a train wreck, and everybody hates it. But I wonder if I were, let's say, a young woman, in the dating scene, let's say in my 20s, and I come across a guy who I come across two men. One can tell me a bunch of sociological theories. Another one can fly a plane and build a house and take care of some guy who just collapsed because he also has EMT training, and who
he can shoe a horse.
Yeah,
he can ride. He can.
Like, who are you? All right, I'm sorry. Resume. Go ahead.
I'll tell you, my son has a girlfriend who's one of the most impressive young ladies I've ever met in my life. So I think that might be part of it.
It works. The system works. Okay. All right. So that's a part of it. But tell me more.
But then it goes into more advanced stuff, because that's not. These are things that a man ought to know how to do. I think, if you could, a man ought to know how to do them. But they aren't necessarily the most economically valuable in today's society. So we don't just stop there. I mean, you got to understand finance and economics, and you got to understand how to invest. So there's a whole cycle about investing. there's one cycle where you actually go to these amazing facilities called Fab Labs, where they have 9 machines, and these are open to the public. 9 machines where you can create anything from circuit boards to furniture. I mean, it's amazing. These facilities are amazing. And it teaches you how to take an idea, something in your head you'd like to create, and bespoke create virtually anything you can imagine at these facilities. So that's part of it. There's also an entrepreneurship cycle. And I'm biased here because I'm basically unemployable. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. And like for my son's next cycle, which starts, I guess, in 2 weeks, is his entrepreneurship cycle. And we're doing I say we because I own a regenerative cattle ranch here in Uruguay, and I'm starting off as the test case, but he's launching a precision drone agricultural business here during that time period. So the idea is that we want to teach young men all of the things you ought to know, the ability to shape the world around you, but also how to create real value in the world where your economic upside is not limited at all by a pigeonholed degree. I mean, we have that Heinlein quote in there, like, specialization is for insects, that famous quote.
Yeah.
And he says, like, a man ought to be able to change a diaper and blah, blah, blah. He goes through a whole bunch of different things about what a man ought to be able to do. And in great part, that's inspiration for the book.
Friends, if you care about your liberty and your financial freedom, you need to hear this. From October 10th to 12th, my friend Mikkel Thorup, host of the Expat Money Show, and who's been a guest on this program several times. In fact, he even came and joined us on the Tom Woods cruise this year, is bringing together top experts from around the world for the Expat Money Online Summit. And it's completely free to attend. You'll learn how to legally protect your wealth, secure second residencies and citizenships, reduce your tax burden, and own property abroad, all to safeguard your freedom. This year's focus is Latin America, where opportunity is booming. Argentina is shifting to free markets under Javier Milei. El Salvador is undergoing a radical transformation, and Panama and Paraguay are offering simple residency programs. A Plan B is no longer optional, it's essential. Reserve your free ticket at expatmoneysummit.com. That's expatmoneysummit.com. Yeah, it's like, as you can't help it. You can't help, especially when you're my age, reading this book, thinking, I wish I'd done this. Because I would like to be the kind of man contemplated in this book, no doubt about it. All right, so beyond the anchor courses, what either comes next or accompanies them?
Well, Doug is a super well-educated man, as most of your viewers probably know. Yeah. And Doug's my personal hero. He's a graduate of Georgetown University. He's well-read and widely read. I mean, he's like, so academics is super important for him. So what we've done is we've selected a series of academic programs, all available almost for free online, where you can get the same sort of academic education, including hard sciences, that you would get if you did go to university. So this whole world of abstract knowledge that you would acquire in university is not something that you don't get with the program. So that's a big part of it. I mean, you need to know things beyond how to build things and shape the world around you. So the academic portion is important part of it. The other thing that we call do fun stuff, activities, is also really important. And this ranges from all kinds of different categories. I mean, like Doug believes that every man ought to know how to play chess and poker and even Go. He believes that you ought to be at least reasonably competent with a musical instrument. Doug believes that Doug was a polo player, so he likes polo. That's a very expensive sport, not appropriate probably for most of the young men in the program, unless you can afford a stable of horses in 2 continents like Doug could. But there's a whole series of activities that we outline that basically allow you to do fun and novel activities regularly, some of which you'll really attach to and focus on building real competency around them. So it's not just like you go back to the dating thing, a woman who is with a man who can, shoe a horse, build a house, save a life, fly a plane. That's all cool. He also can play guitar. He's competent at chess, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole idea, Doug originally wanted to call the book Renaissance Man. And because that's the goal. But the problem is I told him, I said, that doesn't mean to my son and his age what it means to you, that term. So I said, I really think we should change it. But fundamentally, that's the goal. Like somebody who knows about a lot of things and is also someone who's able to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Well, I wasn't going to mention this, but some of our friends know that in January of next year, we're expecting our sixth child, and this is going to be a boy, actually. So I have the 5 daughters. Now I have a boy. So as I read this, I'm reading this thinking about this new little person, what kind of life he's going to have, and he'll have advantages that I didn't have. Everybody wants to have that. It's cliche, but I really do want him to do things that I didn't think to do, or have experiences that never even dawned on me, or meet people, and now in terms of meeting people, let's go back actually to one section in part 1. You have a section where you talk about mentorship as being a model that you don't recommend as much as you do the relationship one might have with a patron. Can you explain, first of all, what's wrong with the mentorship idea? And secondly, it seems a little difficult to go about finding a patron. Like, in other words, being able to say to somebody who's very successful, I can be useful enough to you that it's in your interest to want to help me.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the whole mentorship phenomenon it doesn't work. And it doesn't work because it's a one-way street. You often see formal mentorship programs in large corporations where essentially junior people get assigned a mentor, someone senior, who basically is supposed to try and help guide the younger person in their career. So there's 2 problems with that. Number one, it's limited to the scope usually of employment, usually of their job and their performance within the company. It's also, the problem is it's a one-way street. The mentor doesn't get anything out of it, except for of course, there is satisfaction in helping a young person who really wants, who takes feedback and runs with it. There's a real deep satisfaction in that, and I know you know that very well. But the truth is, it's a one-way street. And what I propose instead is that we use an ancient model, which was very common and formalized in ancient Rome, and it's the patron-client relationship. And in the patron-client relationship, it's a two-way street. Both people do better off because of it. And I'll just use my example with Doug Casey as a patron-client relationship. Doug is my patron. Now, Doug has never given me money, never done, it's not like that. It's that Doug has opened doors for me. Doug has helped me think better about the world. Doug's given me good advice. Doug's taken an interest in my success individually. And in exchange, as I was telling you right before we started recording, I've literally spent the last 3.5 years. I've known Doug for much longer. I've known him since 2007. But for the last 3.5 years of my life, I've spent it trying to help Doug accomplish the things that Doug still wants to do with his life. I mean, he's 79 years old. He's a hero of mine. He's brilliant. And I want to show him off. I want to share him with more people. I want to help him accomplish more. So I work as his client, using these terminology, to serve his interests. And of course, it's mutually beneficial. It works both ways. But because of that, like all relationships, they have to be mutually beneficial to work. And in a mentor-mentee relationship, the mentee is a beneficiary and the mentor gets nothing, and it doesn't really work. So this model works better. I outline it pretty as well as I can in that chapter about how you go about finding a patron. But essentially, it starts with looking at people that you admire, looking at people who are fighting a cause that you think is worthy, and then going to them and saying to them, not, hey, if I can ever help you, let me know, because of course that person doesn't know you or know how they can help you, but instead saying, I've been watching what you're doing, and I think that there's some room to make some improvements here. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to try doing it for you. I'd like to try and help in this specific way. And you'd be shocked how open they are to the help, they welcome it. In fact, one of the strangest things that young people don't understand is that, and I know you know this, Tom, is that we want to see young people thrive. When we see a young, ambitious, intelligent person out there like trying, we open doors for them. We make way for them. There's no ego involved. We want them to blossom. And a lot of young people have this idea in mind that like boomers want to keep them down or whatever. That's just not true at all. And I try and dispel that myth as much as I can. In fact, I think one of the key problems that young people have, and one of the core problems with college, and actually you could say school at all levels, is that you're isolated to your peer group. Now your peer group is as dumb as you are, and they end up being your biggest influence. And what you want is to be influenced by people who you admire. And to be influenced by those you admire, you need to provide value to those you admire and look for ways that you can serve their interests. And in doing so, the law of reciprocity works and things come your way. So, I mean, it's been a real treasure in my life just to be able to call Doug Casey my friend.
Yeah.
Let alone to learn from him and have his support and encouragement along the way.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's so many interesting things about, that's the first word that comes to mind when I think of Doug Casey, is what an interesting person he is. So he, in a way, exemplifies the kinds of things you're talking about in the book and the model that you're proposing in the book. So now let's go back. So we've talked about these anchor courses. We talked about the academic program. And then you were about to say, but then I interrupted you because I can't contain myself on this topic, that then there are what we describe as activities. So how does that fit in? Give us some examples.
Yeah. The activities are things that people might consider hobbies. They could be fly fishing or archery or, firearms or chess or playing guitar or whatever. The key thing that we try and encourage among people is to constantly engage in novel activity. Put yourself in situations that you haven't been before to try to learn and experience new things, because it's weird how it works. When you put yourself in these novel situations, traveling, like one of the anchor courses, for instance, is a cooking school in Florence, one of my favorite cities in the world. You go for a month, you learn how to cook, and you stay on premises, and and you're surrounded by all the history and beauty of Florence along the way. You learn some Italian, but by thrusting yourself in these novel environments, synchronicity happens, and in a weird way. The truth is, this is an example. I was a huge fan of Doug Casey long before I met him. And Doug was always talking about Argentina. So right before the financial crisis in 2007, 2 weeks after my daughter was born, I tell my wife, I really think I got to go to Argentina and look at apartments. I know it's not a convenient time, but I think I got to go do it. So I go down to Argentina, I'm looking, and after a day of looking, I decide, I'm in my hotel. I decide to go out for an evening walk. Walking out of my hotel through the lobby, I literally run into Doug Casey on the sidewalk. This man who was my hero, I'd never met him. I physically, if I hadn't stopped, I would have run into him. And, and these kinds of weird encounters with unusual people happen when you engage in these novel activities, especially if you're a young person out there trying to make stuff happen and you have a few like interesting things under your belt. So these activities are about these novel activities.
Yeah. So I think it's like the idea of making your own luck. That of course some people are, quote, luckier than others, but we shouldn't dwell on that because luck is not primarily what drives your life. But the key thing is, if you've prepared yourself, or if you've put yourself in situations in which you are more likely to be the beneficiary of luck. But as I say, or when something comes your way, but you're prepped for it, you've done the work, you've put in the time so that you're able to receive this piece of luck and exploit it. That's what matters. So you happen to you took yourself out of your ordinary life and put yourself in Argentina at that moment. So therefore you had, that you were in the position to have the luck.
And yet it's hard to call it luck. It's something magical that he was right there at that moment. I mean, it's like true. Something,
I don't know what the word is.
I don't know what the word is either, but I'm telling you, this stuff happens all the time. But for young people, the easiest way to get it is to engage in novel activities, things you haven't done before, places you haven't gone before. Like it has to be, if you're doing anything in your routine, you won't even notice it. You won't even notice the opportunities. So the novel activity is a key part of the book.
Hey everybody, let's take a minute to thank our sponsor, Persist SEO. If you're getting buried by your competition online, then build your brand, your reputation, and your lead flow with digital marketing by Persist SEO. If you're a small local business trying to compete against large companies in the service industry, then increase your visibility with Persist SEO. What if you have low or no leads coming in on a consistent basis? Well, then website search engine and conversion optimization can help move the needle to a more prosperous business model for you. Are you tired of cold calling and networking? Use your website as a lead generation engine. What if you're not showing up for your services in the search engines? Well, get found with Persist SEO Expert Search Engine Optimization. All you have to do is call 770-580-3736 or visit them at ineedseo.help for a free website audit and consultation. That's 770-580-3736 or ineedseo.help. I don't like to comment on books I haven't read because I think that's a gross injustice to the author, and I've had it done to me. I remember when my Politically Incorrect Guide to American History came out, I had somebody denouncing it because I supported wars for oil. And I thought, you must know nothing about me. What are you talking about? So I don't want to do this, and I like Brian Kaplan despite our disagreements. But he has a book on selfish reasons to have more kids, and I'm happy for any reasons, because I think it's I'm like you, I'm a natalist. But my understanding is that he challenges the widespread idea that parents have a big influence on how their kids turn out. He argues, apparently, that the evidence actually is not as robust for that proposition as you would think it might be. And now, whether that's true or not, I feel like a parent who reads and absorbs this book, The Preparation, and approaches, the young boy with it, or, young compared to me, and says, I think this is something we ought to consider rather than the traditional path, I would say, thank goodness I was raised in that household. It's like that is definitely an area where you would have a big influence. But now my question is, how do this is going to seem mundane compared to all the extraordinary things we're talking about that this preparation, as you call it, contemplates. But I still feel like I want to tie it in with what is this person ultimately going to do with his life after the 4-year program, and how does the time spent in the 4-year program connect to that ultimate I don't want to say outcome because it's not necessarily aiming only at that, but it's got to be aiming at least partly at what the rest of my life's going to look like.
Yeah, of course. I mean, ultimately, the person needs to be independent. And part of independence is financial independence, right? So, but I think people get this wrong in that when Americans think of independence, we first think of financial independence instead of thinking of the broader sense of independence as the priority and financial independence secondary. So, so that's one thing. But in terms of, yes, where do you end up from a financial independence standpoint? Well, I can tell you right now, my son, he's 2 years into the program. The first thing he did was the EMT thing. He could spend his summers fighting wildfires and earn enough in a few months a year to live as he wants the rest of the year because it pays so well. Now, does he want to do that? No, but he has, after his first cycle, he has an option that could financially support him if he chose to, working literally maybe 4 months a year. So, and then some of the other trades are much higher skilled, much higher paid, like operating heavy equipment or welding or house building. Those two, of course, so there's all of these, almost all of the anchor courses have a viable economic component to it. Like one of them was sailing. My son sailed around the Falkland Islands and through the Strait of Magellan. He's a qualified crewman on a sailboat now. Now, is that a great gig that you're going to get rich on doing? No, but it's a job, and he's certainly qualified to do it now. And so all of them are designed to deliver economic value, except for one, I would say maybe, that might be there, and that is that spending a few months in Thailand learning Muay Thai, learning to fight. I mean, he also has been doing jujitsu and he's done kickboxing, but he's going to spend starting in January, he's going to spend a few months in Thailand studying Muay Thai. So that one may not have economic value, but literally all the other ones actually do. They actually could turn into a career if it became something that was interesting to them. The combination of those things together, though, especially when you add on entrepreneurship, you add on investing to it, and you add on how to actually build products using these fab labs, I think that there might not be a traditional job that might adequately meet the hopes and dreams of the person who fits in who goes through the preparation, but I have no doubt they will have no shortage of opportunities. My son gets opportunities all the time thrown his way. Not only people who say, hey, like it was for one, just as a side thing, because he's interested in horses and animals. There was a guy who reached out to him through his blog that said, hey, I do mule packing and take people on these long hunting expeditions into the wilderness. Would you like to come up and spend a few days with me and learn how to do that? And he did. And Maxim said it was one of the greatest men he's ever met. I mean, what he learned from the guy, besides actual mule packing and leading hunting parties, was a lot. It was a kind of wisdom an old man can share to a young man. So, but yes, it has to come down to economic value. You have to be able to create economic value in order to be able to thrive in today's society. And this, I think, offers no direct path there. But as somebody who's a college dropout, who's created, many businesses, some failed, a few succeeded better than I expected, and I still own some. There is no straight path. The lie of college that there's this straight line to the top, just get in line, climb the ladder, you'll get there, is false. That's not the way the world works anyway. And so I think really what the book does is it actually embraces the reality more directly, that the path is unclear and the core focus should be becoming the man you want to be and acquiring skills, experiences, and contacts along the way.
The full title of the book is The Preparation, How to Become Competent, Confident, and Dangerous. And you explain what you mean by all these. I think most people can get the first two, but what do you have in mind exactly by dangerous?
Well, dangerous is important. as somebody who's sort of a non-statist, you could say, you might define dangerous in those terms. Somebody who can think for themselves, somebody who knows enough about the world and how things work that they can't be duped easily. Somebody, of course, who's capable of defending themselves and people they love. So I think the physical component is part of it, but I don't like violence and I'm not interested in anything like that. But it's mostly about something who can think for themselves, who knows how the world works, who understands reality, and when confronted with a pile of lies, has the strength and knowledge to say, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going along with this. And I think if we had more men that were dangerous like that, the last 5 years that we experienced wouldn't have happened.
I want to sit down and go through this a second time and just imagine what it would be like for a young person to have all these experiences. Now you
should talk to my son Max.
Yeah, so your son contributed to this book, so obviously it's going well for him.
Well, not only that, here's one other thing. Is one other key part of the cycles I didn't mention is writing and reflection. And because, if you're actually engrossed in these pretty intensive experiences, like sailing, his sailing adventure was quite intense, for instance, probably the craziest thing he's ever done, was the way he would describe it. You learn a lot, and in order to retain that learning, you gotta write about it, I think, to really capture, like, what is it? What happened? What did I get out of it? And as part of his personal accountability from the very beginning, I said, hey, just set up a Substack and just write what you did this week. Just do that. And you publish it. And then it's holding yourself publicly accountable. And then we encourage everyone in the book to do the exact same thing. Now, along the way, he's actually become a competent writer. He's built an audience, people who follow what he does. And it's not an audience, it's an audience of people who want to see him succeed. And it's from this group, this audience that he's built, that he gets incredible invitations to do interesting things, or he's met more and more interesting people along the way. In fact, it was one of his readers who suggested this sailing trip through the Strait of Magellan. It was so, what was I saying with it? I think the important thing is the reflection is a key piece of it. The writing is a key piece of it. The being able to communicate well is a big part of it. And yeah, he's come a long way in 2 years. I mean, you watch your kids, when you leave town for a few days and you come back and they're all bigger, you know how that is as a father?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know exactly when it happened with Max, but when he started this thing, he was definitely a boy. And at some point, I don't know when, I can't put my finger on it, but he became a man. And as a father, I don't even know how to place value on that. Like, what does that mean? So it because it forces such great independence, because there's built-in accountability, because there's enough structure that gives him the guidelines about what to do, and still enough left over for him to pursue his own curiosity. It has a remarkable effect. And I think if we got enough this in the hands of enough young men with just a bit of ambition, who just needed direction, I think it would radically alter their lives. And I think I have no doubt that if it happened to enough of them, it could radically alter way more than their lives. Our lives.
Well, I am convinced. I couldn't be more convinced. So I want to urge people to just go ahead and go read it. So I'll link to it at tomwoods.com/2685. Also in the video description for those of you helping me out with the YouTube algorithm that has never forgiven me for 9 years worth of audio-only episodes. It has never forgiven me.
They punish you forever.
Yeah,
can I do one? Can I do one pitch on the book? I have to say, we have a hardcover version of the book that's expensive. It's $99, and the reason it's $99, this soft cover is $29, and you can get the Kindle for cheaper. But I wanted to make the physical hard copy version of the book as beautiful as I could, because I wanted when someone got it in their hands to recognize that they were holding a book unlike any they'd held before. And it costs a fortune to do it. So it's $99. So I don't care which one people buy, but I'm just saying there's a reason why it's $99, and it's meant to be. I really attempted to try and make it something beautiful, physically to hold.
Yeah.
I that would have an impact on the young person who got it.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I like that idea very much. Well, people can decide how they'd like to do it, but either way, they should check this book out because it's so important. It has, it's just, I read a lot of books for this show, and I do my prep, and I think I do pretty good interviews, but this one just really, my jaw was on the floor thinking about the possibilities. So I'm so glad you guys did this. Do please say hello to Doug for me. I got to get him back on sometime soon. But best of luck. The Preparation, that's the book you're going to get. Doug Casey, Matt Smith, and Max Smith. You can't possibly regret that you read this. It changes the whole game completely. So thanks, Matt, so much for your time.
My pleasure, Tom. It's a real honor to talk to you. Thank you very much for your support. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.